Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the His and Her Money Show, where we make it our business to help you take dominion over your money and your life. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the show. Your eyes and ears could be elsewhere, but the fact that you're here rocking with us, we want you to know that we are grateful for that. You are going to love today's episode. Actually, I'm going to be interviewing a mentor of mine. That's right, man. I'm bringing my mentor on the show so that he can mentor you. He has a fantastic new book that's called Stop Waiting for Permission. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about none other than Stephen Chandler. He's full of wisdom and knowledge from his own story, and he's willing to share it with you. So get your pen and paper ready, or open up your notes app on your phone, because I'm sure, I am absolutely positive that many jewels will be dropped. So prepare yourself in advance. Let's go get Stephen on so we can hear all of his great wisdom. Hey, Stephen, welcome to the His and Her Money Show.
What's going on, man? I am so honored and grateful to be with you.
We are glad to have you here. You know, you've provided wisdom to me one-on-one for a while now. So I was excited to learn that you wrote this book, by which now you're going to share this knowledge that you have with the world. But some people, a couple people, they're being introduced to you for the first time right here and right now. So before we get to exploring this topic about stop waiting for permission, can you just say hello to everybody and kind of let them know what you're all about?
Hey. Well, his name's Stephen Chandler. I pastor a church right outside of Washington, D.C. called Union Church. There's 4 locations in Maryland. We're getting ready to launch our 5th one in Charlotte coming up in a few months. And I am all about 2 things. I'm about connecting people with God. And then, it's the mission of your podcast, helping people dominate and maximize everything that God has placed inside of them. And Talent and Tia, I'm just grateful for what you guys do. Talk about mentor. I feel like it's a reverse mentorship because I'm learning from you. You're challenging me, stretching me, and I'm taking dominion over my finances. So I'm grateful.
Well, we're grateful you're here. You have a brand new book that you have written called Stop Waiting for Permission. Talk to us about the journey just to even coming up with the heart of the content that you wanted to write about, because you're challenging us, pushing us to think bigger and better about who we are and what we're here to do.
So 2016, I had been a senior pastor for 5 years. Our church was about 400 people, and we had not grown in 3 years. And if my wife was on here, she would say I was depressed. I will say I was just slightly discouraged. And I was just like, this isn't working. The dream that God placed on my heart is not coming to pass. And if I'd be honest with you, I was looking for a way to quit. I was looking for a way out. And I went to another church and said, hey, can you take my church? Can you? And it just, I think it was God, but I couldn't find a way out. And when I finally realized there was no way out, I was like, okay, well, I just got to figure this out. And I started to pursue people that were ahead of me, mentors, people that had more experience. I started to change things. I started to look at me and say, hey, we got to deal with this insecurity and this excellence and this and that. And to make a long story short, 4 years later, we were named the fastest growing church in America and have more than doubled since even being named the fastest growing church in America. And as I look back, I'm like, I was so close to quitting because I did not know the potential that was in me. And that's really the heart behind the book. There's so many people that are close to quitting on a business, quitting on a marriage, quitting on an opportunity, their faith, or whatever it may be. And they have no idea how much greatness and potential's inside of them and how close they are to maximize it. So the book is, man, I just want to help people not quit and maximize their dreams.
Why is good not good enough? Let's look at the example you just gave. You said that you were at a point where your church was 400 people and you were highly discouraged. However, that's quadruple the amount of people that were there when you took the church.
Mm-hmm. Telling the whole story.
The average church in America is like 100 to 200 people. So by all accounts, you were above average. But for some reason within you, good was not good enough.
Yeah.
How do we come to that conclusion? Is that a healthy conclusion to come to?
Yeah. So I'm a pastor. You know that I believe in God's word. So you're going to get that angle from me. I believe we were all created by God. And I believe that God put potential. Here's the way I say it. I say every single person on earth is God's solution to some problem here. And I think that until you maximize all the potential gifting and ability that you have inside of you, not just in your business, but in your marriage, in your finances, and raising your kids in every area of your life, there will always be a level of discontent. You're going to struggle to hold on to happiness, to hold on to joy when you're underperforming in the potential that you have inside of you. Now, the thing is, you can compare your life, your success, your effectiveness to somebody next to you, and you may be more effective than they are. But if you would be honest with yourself, you'd say, man, I'm irritated, I'm frustrated because I know there's more in me than I'm experiencing in life. And that's why good is not good enough, because good won't make you content and it won't bring peace. It's really until you fulfill all that God's placed inside of you.
Now, how did you make the move out of the frustration and disappointment that you had on the inside? Because some people, yeah, they know that there's more to life than what they're currently experiencing. But in a lot of people's heads, they're at this place because of X, Y, and Z. They had these circumstances growing up. They had these obstacles that they had to overcome. And when you have to go through that on a constant basis, your ability to dream shrinks. Your dreams get smaller. How did you, at the place that you were of frustration, get up off the mat? Like we see the result today, but go back to when you were down, when you were about to give up. What was the thing that just the little spark of hope that helps you get up off the mat and say, I'm going to figure this out?
So there's kind of a theme today, especially with a little bit of the bashing that goes on with social media, that comparison is bad, comparison is evil. Don't compare your life to somebody else. Be grateful for where you are. Comparison is only bad when insecurity is the root of your heart. But you can actually learn so much by comparing your life to other people. And what happened for me is I began to get around other pastors, which is my industry, that were growing churches, that were impacting their community, that were transforming lives. And I began to realize, wait, they dealt with the same setbacks that I dealt with in my childhood. They came from some of the same parts of town that I came from. They had to go through the same barriers and jump through the same hurdles. And as I began to look around, I realized, hold on, my story is not that unique. There are other people that have had to deal with the same thing I'm dealing with, but yet they're thriving and they're succeeding and they're moving forward. If they can do it, I can do it too. You hear it say all the time, your company matters. Who you associate yourself with, who you surround yourself with matters. And when you get around winners, you begin to learn that most winners don't come from a winner's story. Everybody had adversity and hardship and difficulty and the odds stacked against them. And you got to get a little bit of confidence about yourself and be like, they're not that special. If they can push through that barrier, if they could pay off $200,000 of debt, if they can build a business and not have a college degree, or if they can do it, I can do it as well.
Now, how do you bring this this message to Main Street? So some people, we always, no matter your background, you kind of know that pastors are held to a certain esteem. So people can kind of get your pursuit of trying to be all that God created you to be. You're a pastor, of course, but like for me, I used to be a teacher, and before that, I used to be a soldier. So like, what if I'm a teacher? What if I'm a soldier? Am I supposed to, is this where I should look for my, is it possible that I can be great inside of this arena, this vocation? And, or am I looking elsewhere? Am I this teacher and I'm great? My greatness is over here. Like, talk to the people who they don't have a microphone or a platform, but they desired to maximize their potential, but they're not sure, like in their world, Is that a possibility?
I've heard it said before that people are impressed with your successes, but they can relate to your failures. And one of the things that I do in the book, and one of my goals, even as a pastor, is not to give you the highlight reel of God did this in my life and I'm anointed and I'm accomplished it, because that's not helping anybody. All that is making a bigger chasm between me and people. What I try to highlight on is, man, from 16, how old am I? 35 to 27 at least. I was this insecure, super introverted, socially awkward, still driven and ambitious, but just I wasn't a people's person. There was so much self-doubt. There was so much insecurity. I am extremely intelligent. And it may sound like I'm arrogant to say that, but the reason why I now say I'm extremely intelligent, because for 30 years of my life, I never believed that. My grades didn't show that. The amount of schools I did not get accepted to showed that I mean, there was so many factors in my life that was like, you're just not as bright as everybody else. You don't have it like everybody else. And my prayer and my goal is to really say, listen, if Stephen can accomplish something that's abnormal, if Stephen can do something that is beyond expectation, you can do it 10 times more, because I guarantee you you're more gifted in so many different areas than I am. Another thought is, while everyone is gifted, no one is gifted in every single area of their lives. And what happens is, now here's the negative side of comparison. We compare ourselves to somebody else's success, but we're like, man, I'm not as articulate as them. I'm not as much of a strategist or a numbers person or whatever. And because we don't share their gifting, we count ourselves out. You may not have my gifting, but every single person has a gifting. And we've got to do the work to discover what I call it your unique genius. What's the thing that you do that it just comes naturally to you? You're so much better at it than everybody else is. That is your key to the progress and the greatness that God has for you.
Yeah, I love this, because you talked about a comparison situation that you had growing up. Now I can't relate because I'm an only child, but you said that you struggled when you compared yourself to your older sister. Musically, she was super gifted, and you were just coming into your ability
I
on the
can't
keys
stand
and
her.
stuff. So I'm wondering, like, how many people bring those childhood comparison traps to adulthood
Yeah,
and already feel as though they're already behind the eight ball because they're comparing themselves to maybe siblings. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
if that's the case for somebody, you say we got to do some work internal. What are you speaking of when you say there's some internal work that we need to do to break free from this?
Absolutely. So the reality is, everybody goes through life, and life is not easy for anyone. And because of that, and I'm not going to get too pastoral, but all of our hearts get wounded. It gets wounded when we're compared to an older brother, or compared to a super successful parent, or compared to a parent that wasn't successful. You're going to be just like them one day and all that. And without even realizing that, fear gets embedded in our hearts. And next thing you know, the decisions that we make in life are based on fear. Let's talk about money for a second. Maybe you grew up and money was not prevalent. You never had more than enough. And now that you're adult, every time money hits your hand, you spend it. You're not saving, you're not paying off debt, you're not planning for the future. What's the driver behind that? I'm fearful that this is going to be my last opportunity to have a good time. So I'll worry about tomorrow. But right now, I got to make sure I live life up. Or take the other side of that. You grew up, didn't have enough, blah, 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 blah. And now I save every single penny that comes in. I don't have any debt. I have a lot of wealth, but I also don't know how to enjoy life. I don't know how to be generous and be a blessing to other people. What's the driver? The same driver is fear. I never want to go back to the place where I don't have enough. And the thing is, if we don't deal with those heart issues, if we don't take the time to look on the inside and to say, what's driving me? Is it healthy? Is it passion? Is it purpose? Is it eternity? Or is it fear? Is it pride? Is it insecurity? And if we have those negative drivers, we'll never maximize our potential, and our dreams will take more from us than they give to us.
One of the key phrases in your title is waiting. And one of the principles of Dr. Stephen Covey's classic book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, habit number 1 is to be proactive, not waiting for things to happen. So how do we know if we're stuck? How do we know if we are waiting for permission to be great? How do we know if we are in a state of complacency? Because it's not always recognizable. Sometimes life is just full of things, and we just go in 24-hour cycles just to keep up with all the things we need to keep up with, that we don't even realize that we're in this place of complacency or being okay with being average, or being okay with just getting by. And maybe we don't realize that we're waiting for permission to be something greater. How do we jolt ourselves, wake ourselves up, recognize that maybe this is us?
I wrote in the book, my family, I had 5 siblings, 2 parents, great family. We weren't super poor, but when you have 5 kids, you're not super rich either. So there was not a lot of family vacations where we would jump on an airplane and go anywhere. It was pile into the minivan. Oh my gosh, it was a baby blue 1992 Dodge Caravan, the ugliest van you've ever seen in your life. And we would pile in that car, drive up to New Jersey to grandma's house, or down to Myrtle Beach, or whatever we could find on the East Coast where we lived. And we would know, hey, it's 300 miles, 200 miles, 100 miles. There were mile markers. So even though we were not yet at the destination that we were trying to get to, we knew that we just passed exit 17, and now we're at exit 15, and then 13. And we were able to see that progress was being made. So the first step is you've got to have a vision of where you're going. I got to know what I want my marriage to look like, even if it's going to take us 3 years of marriage counseling and loving and serving and all that. I got to know what my finances are going to look. That's why you listen to His and Her Money, so you can know, here's what life looks like when I get out of debt. Here's what life looks like when I have so much money I don't even know what to do with it. I need a vision of where I'm going. Once I have a vision, and this is, man, it's major for people like me that are easily discouraged and don't celebrate much. You've got to take the time to celebrate wins, even if it's not the ultimate win. So I'm trying to pay off $100,000 worth of debt. Okay, great. That's the ultimate win. Hey, but when you pay off that $2,000 credit card, can you please pause? Even if you just dance around your kitchen, I mean, take a moment to say, hey, that was a win. I'm not where I want to be. I sound like a preacher now, but thank God I'm not where I used to be. You've got to take a moment to say, hey, I'm making progress, and to celebrate those incremental wins, because then you'll know, hey, I'm moving forward. I'm making progress. Now, if you look around, it's been 6 months and I don't have one win to celebrate. It's been 3 years and I can't say anything new has happened. I haven't experienced something that I've never experienced before. Then you've got to take a deep look and say, wait, have I settled? Am I complacent? Have I stagnated? Am I not moving forward?
Imagine a life where your money isn't strangled by mortgage payments. Imagine what you could do when you don't have to send them money that you work so hard for. Come get simple, powerful, and real solutions to eliminating monthly mortgage payments forever. America's #1 money couple presents Crush My Mortgage. In this exclusive course, you will be equipped with strategies to help you move faster toward the promised land of owning your house free and clear. Learn strategies to help you in the areas of payment acceleration, extra income generation, and wealth creation, all to help you crush your mortgage. Visit crushmymortgage.com and get started today. Join us on the path to power, freedom, and legacy. That's crushmymortgage.com.
You talked about another big part of maximizing our potential and living out our purpose and unleashing our gifts. What you learned in your own story was you talked about it earlier, the power of connecting with the right people, or finding mentors, or finding blueprints that you want to build something similar to, that you want to go after as well. Can you talk about how to identify good mentors, and even how did you go about approaching them and connecting?
Yeah, that's major. I think it starts off with just the basics of who has what you want. Just start looking around, watch other people's marriages, and it's not too difficult. You go out with another couple, and she doesn't order her food fast enough, and you kind of see him get irritated and snap, and you knew you were coming to this restaurant before we got here, and mental note, I don't want a marriage like that. On to the next. You know what I mean? Or I'm at the same restaurant, I'm with Tia and Talent, and the bill comes and they grab the bill before I can get it, and I'm like, oh, I would never do that. And then they drop a $200 tip on a $100 meal. And I'm like, oh, I couldn't even imagine doing that. You see something that you're like, man, I want that. I want to experience that. So that's step number one. Step number two is you start poking around. Man, ask questions. I'm never going to get access to Tia and Talent, but I can listen to their podcast. I can, start applying. I'm going to just, how'd you get there? How'd you do this? How'd you do that? Whether it's reading a book, listening to a podcast, or actually having access to a person. Here's one of the big things that I learned, honestly, the hard way. I'll give you a story. So I'll give you a quick story. So I got invited to a pastor's roundtable with, some of the most known who's pastors you would ever know. It was a 2-day event. I went, took 9 pages of notes. There's only about 15 people in the room, but I never asked one question. And honestly, I was intimidated. I was the smallest church in the room, that insecurity thing again. And they had their round table every year since. And for 5 years, I never got invited back. And what happened was 2 things. 1, I was invisible in the room. And 2, I hadn't really done anything with what I had gotten. And it was like, well, you don't need to be back in the room because you haven't even applied what you received the last time you were in an environment to learn. So I think a big thing is, sometimes we just want access to influential people. Man, if I could get around this millionaire, if I could get around this entrepreneur, if I get around this person, that person, or whatever, maybe, okay, would you do anything with what you got? Because I call it work a breadcrumb. If you could take the smallest, they wake up at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. or whatever it may be, and they spend 20 minutes just thinking through their day. If I just apply that one thing I picked up and I see progress in my life, I'm going to get more access to that person. So it's really showing a return on investment for the mentoring or the book or the podcast or whatever investment you get in your life.
How did you bounce back from that moment? Because you took the step to identify mentorship, people that were ahead of you that you could learn from. You did what you had to do to get in the room. You took the notes, but then there was the disconnect between, you talked about the fact that you didn't ask questions. And then there was also the fact that you took all these notes that you didn't apply. So if somebody, like you said, there's people listening right now, been listening to this show for years, ain't paid off nothing.
Come on. I feel like we hit a nerve.
But you just spoke something like, man, I've got this information, but I haven't done anything. That could be a moment of further defeat. That could put you lower than you already were. How did you bounce back once you recognize the error?
Yeah. There's a chapter in the book called No Pain, No Pain. And the reality is, you think about working out in the gym, they said, no pain, no progress. I'm like, forget the pain. I just don't want any pain. Well, that's why you don't have muscles. Anyway, pain is a part of progress. And the faster you learn that, the faster failure, setbacks, difficulties, adversity won't have you quit forever. And I've been through a lot of pain, and I've learned it the hard way that failure is just part of the journey. So you just have those moments where you just sit in your house and you're like, man, that was stupid. I really should have said more, or I shouldn't have bought that, or I should have done this, or I should have done that. But then you realize there's some really influential, successful people that have made some really dumb mistakes, but they didn't let that dumb mistake be the last decision they ever made. And if they can bounce back from that, then I can bounce back from this as well. And I don't know who's listening to this podcast, but oh man, we all are so good at beating ourselves up. I should have. Why did I? I shouldn't have. Listen, everybody has a story of regret. Don't let your last mistake paralyze you and keep you from going after all that God has for you.
Yeah, I love that. Now, I'm curious, as you've gone on this journey and you are a husband, how do we, because there's a lot of couples listening, as we go on this journey trying to become all who God created us to be, how do we include our spouse, our significant other, the people that we love on this journey? Like, what type of conversations were you having with your wife, Zai, as she was there as you were trying to figure a lot of your story out, your journey out, and vice versa? How did you encourage her to do the same?
Yeah. So it's going to sound like I'm like continually plugging the book, which I am, but it's also because it's just my life. There's a chapter in there about you can't make it without a team. Any dream that's big enough to accomplish is too big for you to accomplish by yourself. And your team may just be you and your spouse. And in order for a team to win, a team first has to agree on where we're going and what the vision is. So long before I'm hitting barriers and trying to do this and trying to do that, man, me and Zai would be up. Even before we were married, we'd be on the phone till 1 a.m, 2 a.m. Man, imagine when, the church looks like this. Man, imagine when our kids graduate high school. Imagine when our money looks like this, and just dreaming about the future and setting a vision for it. So I think the first thing, particularly for married people, is you've got to have an agreed upon vision of here's what we want our kids to look like when they're 18. Here's what we want our money to look like. Here's what we want our career. Listen, me and Zai talked about the vacations we were going to take when we got out of debt. Like, man, listen, we going to Virginia Beach now, but I'm telling you, man, as soon as we get out of debt, we ain't going to no Virginia. We going to Cancun. I mean, we had plans and visions, and, we never went as far as cutting out pictures and vision boards and all that, but there's nothing wrong with that at all. You need, with your spouse, to have those moments where you're just dreaming about what could be, and then you're clear on what the steps are to get to where you want to go. Because a vision without strategy is just a fantasy. If you don't have step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, then you're not. That's not a dream that's going to come to pass. You need to talk about every step along the way.
Now, does that come back to the whole mentorship piece, the whole research piece? Because if I write my dream out, then the next step you said is now I can't just have the dream. I got to have strategy to make this dream become a reality. So 1, do you have anything that you would throw out there to do that? And then 2, like, how are you measuring on your journey as you were, for you specifically, it was to maximize your genius so that you could be the best pastor for your church and expand the kingdom agenda in your region. So how are you measuring, tracking, keeping yourself motivated to keep going, to keep pursuing it?
So if I got a 5-minute lunch with the host of His and Her Money, and I heard before they were this successful, school teacher, served in our armed forces, I'm asking what changed? What was the decision, or how did you know I'm going to take this leap? What did it look like the first 3 months? What did it look like after 12 months? What are some major setbacks you faced? What are some adversity you had to push through? When was the mama I made it moment? When did you know that we're a big deal? Like, we got this. And now that you are successful, how do you stay motivated? What's the next? I'm going to ask questions that makes you unpack your journey. And I was just talking to somebody about this. When you have access to someone of influence, don't waste their time by processing your thoughts. Ask questions, write a million notes down, and then go home afterwards and unpack your notes, unpack your thoughts and all that. But after I get that 5 minutes, then I'm going home or wherever. And it's, You know, there's an Old Spice commercial where the guy with all the muscles, he's like, look at your man. Now look back at me. Now look at your man. I could be your man, but I'm not because you with that joker. Like, I will go and I'll look at their life and then I'll look at mine. I'll look back at my life and I'll be like, okay, I've got to adjust here. Here's where they started. I'm not even there yet, so I need to get started. Okay, they hit this barrier. I'm hitting that barrier. It means two things. I'm not losing my mind. And second, I'm on the right track. And I'm literally just charting a course that I got from other people's success.
I hope you wrote that down, ladies and gentlemen. I'm curious, what would you say? How would you articulate this? Because you've been up front and you said that this journey, it won't be easy. You got to do a lot of hard work, including a lot of internal work, which is the hardest type of work. But you did it. You did the work. What would you say is the biggest, most positive result that you've personally experienced as a result of doing the work where you put yourself in position to stop waiting for permission and you pursued everything that God placed inside of you?
If I could jump through this microphone, jump through this camera, and like grab somebody by their face in the most, that sounded a little violent. In the most passionate, endearing, like, please believe my heart. I want this for you more than I can even express with words. I wake up and I can't believe my life is my life. I never knew that I could impact this many people, influence people, that I could help transform people's lives, I never knew that I ever could do something like what God is doing through my life with the church and the book and ministry and all that other good stuff. And here's what I know for a fact. A life that you can't even dream of is inside of every single one of us. And my motivation, my prayer, my push for people is, yeah, it's painful. Yeah, it's not easy. Yeah, it's going to require looking at some heart issues and dealing with some past trauma that you don't really want to dig back up. But it is so worth it, because you are going to be walking in a world and in a life that you didn't even know possible. I mean, to that person right now who has $100,000 of student loans and they're just discouraged and overwhelmed, and man, I can't even imagine life without student loans. Hey, imagine the day where you write $100,000 check to pay off somebody else's student loans. Like, imagine the joy that's going to come flooding in your heart when you're able to give somebody else an opportunity that you didn't have yourself. That's a reality. That's inside of you. And that's worth pushing through the pain.
Agreed. Let everybody know a little bit more about what they'll find inside the pages of Stop Waiting for Permission and how they can get a copy for themselves.
You're going to find two things. You're going to find inspiration. My prayer is that this book is a shock, that if you find yourself in a place where you've kind of just plateaued, complacent, or think less of yourself, that this book is gonna wake you up and be like, no, there's so much more to life than you have experienced. And then the second thing is you're gonna find practical, applicable steps. Like, here's where I start. One thing that happens to me a lot is other people's success discourages me, because I see where they are and I see where I am, and there's a chasm in between. My goal in this book was that here's step 1, and then here's step 2, step 3, step 4. If you do this, you will wake up 6 months from now and you'll have a marriage, children, money, faith, business, whatever you're focusing on. It won't be perfect, but it will be further along than you ever thought possible. And then the last thing, you're just going to hear all my mistakes. My prayer is that you can learn from what I did wrong and not necessarily what I did right, because I didn't do everything right.
The book, again, is called Stop Waiting for Permission. The link is in the show notes of this episode. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can look right underneath the video in the description box and you will find the link there. Also, let everybody know how they can stay in touch with you online. Maybe they're in the DC area and could come to a campus. Let us know how to connect.
Definitely everything Stephen Chandler is Stephen. That's Stephen with a PH. like it's written in the Bible, but StephenRChandler.com, and you get the book there. There's a study guide and all that other good stuff. And then the church is theunionchurch.com, theunionchurch.com. If you live in the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia, come through, pull up.
Awesome. Now, before we go, there might be somebody who's like teetering. They're on the fence, like, man, I should do this, but man, can I do this? What words of encouragement would you give to that person to push them off the fence and into motion on this journey to be great?
Henry Ford said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And the 100% of the journey is, what do I believe about myself? And I just need you to hear right in this moment, you've got to start believing that there's greatness inside of you, that there's genius inside of you, that you have everything that you need to build the life that you dream of. Don't wait another second. Let's start this journey together.
Bam. There you have it. Thank you so much, Stephen, for coming by the His and Her Money Show and dropping all this wisdom off to us today.
Grateful for you all.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another fantastic edition of the His and Her Money Show is complete. Thank you for tuning in. I hope that you took good notes, and I hope that you are now headed to go pick up a copy of Stephen's new book. It's called Stop Waiting for Permission. When you read it, you will have your blueprint to get above the norm, get above sitting in average complacency, and be 100% of who God created you to be. It's a blueprint from start to finish that will help you walk out the steps that you need to take on this journey. That's all we got for this time, guys. It's been great. Until next time, peace.